All right, cheers. Yeah, so this is for the general training module. The task one in the writing is different to academic, so this is exclusively for general training this week. We're looking at the task one, which is always a letter, but specifically this week we're looking at letters of complaint because they are very, very, very common as subjects for the task one. Okay, and we're going to be looking at some different things. So we're going to be looking at the structure, including how you should start your letter and how you should finish off your letter. And we're also going to be looking at some of the useful language, useful phrases that you might want to have for a letter of complaint. Okay, we're going to have a look at the formality in a moment. So a quick overview of the writing task one. It's always a letter. There is no option there. You're always going to write a letter, minimum of 150 words, okay? There is no maximum, but really you don't want to be writing much more than 150, 160, 170 is completely fine. But make sure you are definitely over 150 because you do lose a lot of marks if your writing is under the word count. And try and keep it to 20 minutes because you do need the 40 minutes for the task too, okay? It's longer, it's more difficult, and it has more marks, quite simply, okay? So one of the most common ones that you're going to get is a letter of complaint. We've seen that many, many times, okay? So has anyone ever in real life written a letter of complaint? And what was the subject? What was the reason why? Anyone written to complain about anything? Or sent an email, perhaps would be, no, to Amazon. Okay, yes, that's probably quite a common one. And what were you complaining about, Sankalp? Okay, about a poor internet connection. Okay, good. So, products, services, customer service, that's quite a common topic. Okay, all right, very good. So we're going to look at some of the things that, tend to come up in the IELTS complaints. So looking at this picture here, what situation do you think this person in, and what kind of letter would he then be writing? What do you think happened? Bearing in mind that we talked about products and services. Yes, okay, very good. So a problem with the car, his car's broken down. Maybe there's a flight there, but I think we're looking mainly at that the car has broken down. Yes, I see what you mean. This space, he can't fit his suitcases into the boot. Okay, what about the second one? Okay, what do you think the letter of complaint is? Yeah, it's a very bad day. Yes, okay, noisy neighbors, I think, is what we're looking at here. So complaining to your neighbor, okay. What about the lady in the third picture? What do you think might have happened to her? Okay, maybe, yeah, I think Mustafa, you're probably right, or Suman, I think maybe her bags, her luggage has gone missing, gone to a different destination, or possibly it's a delay. Yeah, lost luggage, exactly. Okay, and perhaps the last one, what do you think that they are? Okay, yeah, so maybe it could be the food or it could be the service for Cass. I think you're right, the wrong dish or the quality of the food is perhaps not very good. Okay, or the order was wrong. Yeah. Okay, so the letters that you get in general training, they can be, there's 3 types of letter you can get. One is informal, one is semi-formal, and the other one is formal. So in terms of letters of complaint, what kind of letter and language do you think you would be using? Okay, yes, it's very, very unlikely, I think almost impossible, that you would have an informal letter. Most of the time it's going to be formal. So in that case, you are writing to a company to make the complaint. But you could, if we look at the second one where we've got the neighbor, that's more semi-formal. So you are writing to an individual, but the situation is quite a serious one. So you're not going to be able to use informal language. Okay, so we're going to tend very much on the formal side of the language, particularly because it's a, as we said, a difficult situation, a sensitive situation. So, you know, we need to be careful with the language, okay? So let's have a little look at this. So this is the example that we are going to use today, okay? Okay, so Adita, in terms of language, very little difference. But in terms of the content, formal is going to be to a company, and semi-formal is going to be to an individual, to a person that you know, but not a friend. Okay. So have a look at this letter here. This is very typical. This is what you see when you open your writing test. You always have a situation there. You have the background, which is explained to you. And then it tells you who to write to. So this will tell you what kind of letter you're writing, okay? If it says to a company, it's always going to be formal. When it's informal, they always say to a friend, okay? Semi-formal, they might say a neighbor or a colleague or your boss, something like that, okay? So they're basically telling you what kind of letter you need to write, okay? And then you always have 3 bullet points, okay? And you must include all those 3 bullet points in your letter in that order, okay? 1 paragraph per bullet point. So it's very good because it really helps to tell you the structure that you need to use for your letter, because each of those bullet points should be 1 paragraph in terms of the layout, the organization of your letter, okay? The other thing to be very careful is you need to be very detailed with in your answer, okay? Don't be vague, just have lots of detail, lots of very concrete information, okay? And they also tell you how to begin. So you always begin with the salutation, as we call it, with dear. You don't need to write any addresses, you don't need to write any dates, anything like that. Total waste of time. Just start from the dear at the beginning, okay? So now we're going to look a little bit at planning. So very important with all of the writing to just spend a couple of minutes making a quick plan before you start, okay? If you know what you're going to write in terms of the content, then when you're actually writing, you can really focus on the grammar, making sure you've got complex sentences, making sure you've got good linking phrases, rather than still be thinking about the content that you're going to put in. So very quick, only takes a moment, but just make sure that you have your plan ready, okay? Best way to do that at the beginning is just underline the key words, okay? So you know what to focus on, and you also need to, you also know what you need to include, okay? You don't want to have an incomplete answer. That's also going to lose you marks. So looking at that, what other phrases or words would you say are key words that you would want to underline as part of your plan? We've got rented a car. What else would we put? What do you think is key information? Yeah, so you've had some problems that have, and also that they haven't been fixed yet. Very good, yeah. You could do the time phrase. Okay, yeah, so a number of problems and what happened. Okay, very good. Yes, they haven't fixed the problem yet. This is very important that you include that. Okay. And you would also, I would say, underline the beginning of the 3 bullet points, because then it's very easy. You can fix in your mind, what is the function of each of my paragraphs? Yeah, exactly, Anil. So introducing yourself, explaining the problems, and giving the action you want them to take. Okay, so you know the topic of the 3 body paragraphs in your letter. Okay. So, and then you just, you know, come up with some information for those. You're just creating it. Doesn't particularly matter, you know, just as long as it's relevant, it makes sense. So we've got some pictures here to kind of stimulate your brainstorming. So looking at that first picture, what kind of information do you think that might be related to that we would put in this kind of letter? Kind of yes, I think that's how Pawandeep. You've you know, to say that you're you have a membership, so you know you're a long-standing customer, you know, you're a special customer, something like that. Okay. What are we looking at here with the second picture? Yes, exactly, Abdullah. You need you deserve a better service. Yes, okay, so you've got to give the information about the car, what's the make of the car, probably the number plate, something like that. Yeah, maybe some reference, the model, exactly, 627. Okay, car make and model, Arifa, exactly. Okay, then what are we looking at there? Okay, this is an expensive car, yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, so what happened, the issues, the fact that you had some problems with the car, okay. And then we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail. So in terms of that picture, what issue are we thinking about? Okay, that could be one of them. If we're looking at the picture, what specifically are we looking at? Yeah, so the lights could be, yeah, it's not quite the headlights, it's the, yes, the signal light or the indicator. In British English, we would say the indicator isn't working, okay? What other problems might you complain about in terms of a faulty car? Somebody said the car didn't start. Okay, indicators are not working properly. Okay, and maybe unexplained noise from the engine. Okay, the locking. Okay, very good. Okay, perhaps a problem with the AC or the battery. Okay, yeah, the clutch and the brakes, Kartik. Okay, some very nice car language we've got coming up here. Okay, fuel leakage, Pawandeep, very nice. So remember, you know, the more specific you are with the problem, the better your vocabulary is going to be. If you can say something like fuel leakage, or, you know, the side mirrors, the indicator lights, that's very specific. Okay. And what's the next picture talking about? Okay. Oh yes, Aaron, suspension, that could be a problem as well. Yeah. I don't know about the 4 p.m. Yes, okay. Remember, you already called the company and that, yes, very good, Kartik. So there was no response to your complaints. That's very, very important to mention that very specifically. And then what do you think we're looking at in the last picture? Okay. Okay, yeah, no action despite content. Yes, okay, Tricia, so you want some kind of compensation. What else you want? Yes, Kartik, maybe you want a refund. What else might you ask for? Okay, we've got compensation and upgrade, Suman, very nice. Or perhaps a gift or some kind of free service. Okay, very nice, Arifa, maybe you want them to replace the car, okay? So again, be very specific with the action that you want them to take. It's not enough just to say, I would like you to take some action, okay? They always want specific information. And again, the more specific you are, the better the vocabulary is that you will be using and showing the examiner, and then they can give you a very high score in terms of the vocabulary. Okay. So this is the plan that we made. So we've got the make and model, as you said, and the registration. I think this is the kind of information they'd want to have. Okay. Bit of information about yourself, because it does say introduce yourself, then the problems and the action that we want them to take. So we want them to replace the car, apologize, and give us some kind of compensation. Okay, so we're very specific information there. All right, so just a couple of minutes. I imagine, yes, I don't think it's a real registration. Just spend a couple of minutes at the beginning, just making a little table like that. Make sure you've got your content ready, then you can go into the actual writing and you're not still turning over ideas in your head. Okay, so let's have a look at the structure. Okay, so as we said, so we need to open with a specific kind of phrase and introduce ourselves. That was the first paragraph. Yeah. Then we're going to describe the problem. That was the second bullet point. The request was the third bullet point, and then you always need to have some kind of closing statement at the end. Okay. So we're going to give you some phrases, some typical phrases that you use in letters. Okay. One of the key things in the task achievement for general training is correct letter conventions. Okay, so that means that you're using these standard phrases that we have for letters, also that you're opening and closing the letter in the correct way for the type of letter that you're writing, be it formal, informal, or semi-formal. Okay, so where would you can just put 1, 2, 3, or 4 to make it easier. So I'm writing to complain about. Okay, yeah, good. Very, Katrina's very quick. That's definitely how you're going to open your letter. Okay, and the next one. Okay, very good. So closing off. Okay. What about saying how dissatisfied you are? Okay. Okay, very good. Yeah, because of what happened. Okay, what about the next one? Okay, very, very useful request phrase. Yeah, I would be grateful. I would appreciate it if, you know, these are very important to include in these types of letters. Okay, to make matters worse. Okay, exactly. Yeah, so we're going in then to the second problem that we have. Okay. What about this one? Okay, good. So this is our request. Okay, and the next one. Okay, very good. So this is another way that you can introduce the purpose of your letter. How about the next one? Okay, very good. Full refund. What about this one? Okay, very good. So always good to put the consequence of these problems. I think somebody just mentioned that there, like I missed my flight or I missed an important meeting, to just make it really serious. Okay, what about this one? Okay, very good. Very standard way to close the letter. How about this one? Okay, very good. So again, giving the purpose of your letter. And finally, yes, a bit more like 3. Okay, so these are basically standard letter conventions. You can use these to introduce then the factual information that you've already put in your plan. Okay, so do use the letter conventions. They are standard. You don't need to change them in any way. They are what we would use if we were writing a letter of complaint. Okay, and they also, you know, they tell the examiner what you're doing, so they work as linking phrases as well. Really, really important. Okay, so let's have a little look at how we start and finish. So if it's a formal letter, how are you going to, what's the salutation? Always, almost always. How are we going to start? Okay, very good. It definitely needs to be dear. Okay, you don't have any option in that case because it's formal, or if it was semi-formal, maybe you would write Dear Mr. Anderson. If you're writing to a company, you're always going to start Dear Sir, Madam, okay, because you don't know the name of the person. Don't write to whom it may concern. Just write Dear Sir, Madam, if it's to a company, okay? And hi, hello, anything like that is great for informal letters, but it's not to be used with a formal letter, okay? All right, and then you have to have a similar sign off at the end, okay? So what are the ways that we can end? Yeah, pretty much will, a little bit, add another word to that. Remember, this is a letter, not an email. So it does, okay, very nice, Galaxy. We can have yours faithfully or yours sincerely, okay? And we'll have a look at the difference in a moment, okay? You can't use best wishes, all the best, regards, okay? They are great for emails, but this is a letter, and we have very, very set ways of opening and closing letters in British English, okay? So if you start, Dear Sir, Madam, how are you going to finish? Which of those two possible sign-offs goes with Dear Sir, Madam? Try the other one. Yes, yours faithfully. Okay, so if you don't know the name of the person you're writing to, you finish with yours faithfully. If you use the person's name, Dear Mr. Anderson, then you will finish yours sincerely. So 99% of the time, formal letter will be Dear Sir, Madam, yours faithfully. We don't really use yours truly in British English. We do tend to stick to yours faithfully and yours sincerely. Like I said, it's very, very set, these phrases, okay? And, you know, again, correct punctuation convention is commas after all of these salutations and sign-offs, okay? So let's go now into the full letter itself. So there's the task again, just to remind you of those 3 bullet points. So as we said, we're going to start with Dear Sir, Madam, okay? Then you need to put the purpose, okay? So it's really important, again, to get a good score in task achievement. Clear purpose is what the examiners are looking for, okay? So how might we begin this letter? How would you suggest? Okay, yes, that's fine. Any other options? Remember that we're giving the purpose. Oh, I like that, to bring this to your notice. Yes, okay. So, and in this case, you can actually start with your introduction because that's part of the first one, but we've got some good ones there. Yeah, to complain about, to report, to tell you about the problems, okay. So we're also going to start with who we are because it's important in this case to tell them, you know, you're a customer, platinum car club member, okay. And how would we finish that sentence? Okay, I'm writing to, okay, good. Yeah, I'm writing to complain about the vehicle which I rented. Okay. Let you know is a little bit informal. Yeah. So it's nicer if you use something like complain, inform, those kinds of names. You don't need to use your name. You know, you're not saying who you are in terms of your name because that doesn't mean anything to them. But, you know, the fact that you're a frequent customer and you're a platinum card member, then, you know, that does make a difference. Okay. All right. And again, very, very detailed. Okay. Very specific details. So what are we going to put now? After the, what are the specific details about the car that we rented? Okay, very good, Abdullah. So, you know, you're going to give a time. Yeah, okay. And you could say where you rented it from, your London branch, and the date. Okay. So this is all important. It could also then be the car model. Okay. So frequent customer, very useful phrase to use in terms of letters of complaint. Okay. The vehicle which I rented. Okay. Branch, again, very useful word to use in terms of that. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't matter particularly how you write the date, but it's good to have the date there because it's important information. Okay. So then we're going to go into the problems. Okay, so this is our second paragraph, and as it says there, probably going to be quite a long paragraph. This is where you're going to put the bulk of the information. You know, what was the problem and what was the consequence of that problem. Okay, so probably going to be the biggest paragraph. Okay. Very detailed and with a clear organization that you've developed all the way through. Okay. So we're going to start with saying what the car was. So the car I rented is a, how could you continue this sentence? Yes, I would definitely leave a space between the paragraphs. 6 to 7, because it just makes it very, very clear that where you're beginning and ending a paragraph. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yes. So Mercedes S-type with a registration. Da 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 da. Okay, we rented a Mercedes. How about the next one? When I collected the car, I was assured that. How could we continue that sentence? Okay, very good, Karthik. Yeah, I was assured that, you know, it was in good condition. Okay, exactly, something like that. Yeah, it was in good working condition. Very nice, Oriome. Good condition, or there would not be any issue or problem. Okay, good. So again, if you think about the logical sequence, this is when you picked it up. And then you can contrast that with whatever happened. So however, okay, I quickly noticed a fault with, what am I going to continue there? If you remember, we had, okay, yeah, so you could put any of those types of things. Those are all good options, okay. We've gone for the indicator lights, but whatever you want to choose is very good, yeah. Okay, both of which were, how could we finish that sentence? We're okay, yeah, we're broken, we're not working. Faulty, Abiola is a very nice word to use as well. Okay, so faulty, broken, not working. Okay. And then, okay, good linking phrase. So now we're moving on to the second problem. So not only were the indicator lights broken, but when I tried to start the car after leaving it parked overnight, what happened? How are we going to finish that? It wouldn't start. Okay, very nice. So yeah, it wouldn't start. That's the right grammar. Or maybe you could say the battery was dead, something like that. Yeah, okay. Or we could also say it failed to start. Okay. And then, as we said, give the consequence. What happened as a consequence of these problems? This is why you're making this complaint. Okay. So what could we say? As a result, okay, very good, Narendra. I missed an important meeting. Okay, I was unable to attend the appointment. Okay, very good. Exactly, I was late for an important business. Or it could be that you missed your flight, something like that happened. Okay, good. All right. And then remember, there was another problem. There was the fact that you'd phoned the company and that you hadn't had any response. Okay, so I called, how are we going to continue that sentence? Okay, very nice. I called the company twice. I called the customer care, the hotline, the branch. That's all really good vocabulary. Okay, customer service. And we've given a time. Okay. And was reassured that I would what? Okay, there was no right. So how could we finish that sentence? Okay, yeah, very nice, Nita. The issue maybe rather than matter, but would be resolved soon. Okay, would be fixed as soon as possible. Make sure that you write ASAP out in full. Yeah, so we don't want any abbreviations because it's a formal letter. Okay, so we've said that we would receive the replacement car. Yeah, maybe they send a mechanic. And it is extremely disappointing that. How can we finish that sentence? Okay, something like that. Yeah, nothing happened. No action has been taken so far. Parvez, very, very nice. Okay, I haven't had any communication with them since. So you can see this is quite a long paragraph. There's a lot of detail in there. We got a very clear kind of a timeline of the mistakes and the results, and then the further problem of there being no communication. Okay. Let's have a little look at the language before we moved on. Okay. So everything in the past simple, we're describing what happened, but we're also using some passive. So we get a nice mix there of active verbs and passive verbs. Okay. And it's all clearly linked together. Okay, oh, that's very nice, Siva. It's beautiful how it transitions. So very important to get this link. It's not just the task 2 where you need to use linking phrases. Okay, you need to use them, or you need to have a good connection in the task 1 as well. Okay, including time phrases. Those are also ways of connecting what happened together if you've got a timeline there. Okay, so a nice smooth flow through what happened and a clear explanation. Okay, and then we move on to the next paragraph. So remember, separate paragraph for the next bullet point. You want to know, you want to suggest some action that they're going to take, and if you remember, little picture there to remind you what we were going to do for our compensation. Okay, and like it says here, you don't want to threaten. Okay, you're asking for something, but you're not threatening them in any way. So very polite. Don't say you're going to take them to court or something like that. Just be quite firm but not threatening. Okay, so I'm going to start this with a clear I would like to. How could we complete that sentence, or how could we continue that sentence? Okay. Okay, yes, maybe refund, change of car. Okay. So first thing was to request. So as a lot of you put there, request an immediate replacement for the car. Okay, so request is a very nice word to use there. Okay. And then that's not all. We want something more. So I would appreciate, if you remember, it was an apology and compensation. So how can I continue that sentence? I would appreciate, or you could also say, I'd be very grateful, Aisha. I would appreciate, yeah, if you could, would be a good way to continue, Siva. Okay. Or we can just say an apology and appropriate compensation. So you can follow that with a noun, and it works very quickly, or your swift response, 627. Or you could say if you could, and then you could follow it with a verb. Okay. All right. So then we got, again, very clear action we want them to take. Don't be vague in that part. With the action part, be very, very specific. Okay. And again, very nice phrase there for the inconvenience caused to me. Okay. So again, we've got some very nice language here, an immediate replacement. Remember, collocation, using the right words together, is very important when it comes to vocabulary. So immediate replacement, appropriate compensation, and you know, the inconvenience, that's a good standard letter phrase that we would use very often in these types of letters of complaint. Okay. So you can see the full, what we've done so far here. Okay, so we've got the formal introduction, dear sir, madam, we're writing to a company, so no name. Then we have who we are and the purpose of the letter. That's your first bullet point done. Second paragraph, second bullet point. More information here, very detailed. Third paragraph, third bullet point, or actually, sorry, the fourth one, because we've got quite a lot for the middle bit, so we've divided it into 2 paragraphs. Then we have our last bullet point in a separate paragraph where a specific action that we want them to take. Okay, all right. And then we always need a closing statement to finish it off before we say yours faithfully. So what kinds of closing statements? It should be yours faithfully. That's a typo, Abdullah. Yeah. Okay, looking forward is a little bit informal. Not sure about hey. How can we close off our... Yeah, the car I rent, it still is a Mercedes. It's not died or anything, so it is a Mercedes. Okay, thank you for considering. Okay, hope to hear from you soon. I think that's quite good. Yeah. Okay. We've got I look forward to your reply, but yeah, I hope to hear from you soon is very, very nice as well. Okay, then yours faithfully. Then put your name at the end, just use your own name. Okay. So exactly, sign a name at the end. Okay. And just to summarize what we talked about, so do make a plan before you start, have your content first, then you can focus on the language. Keep it to 20 minutes maximum for the task 1. Do not count your words. That's a waste of time. You should know what 150 words looks like in your handwriting before you go to the exam through all of the practice that you can do. You can download and practice on IELTS writing answer sheet so you know exactly what it looks like. Okay, there we go. And practice as many different types as possible. That's true of everything related to IELTS. The more you see, the more you look at, the less likely you're going to get a shock in the test. Okay. Okay, so thank you very much.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Annalie. Thanks for that presentation. Very enlightening there on how to write this type of letter. And thank you guys for your suggestions, your answers, and some of your questions as well have been really good. So well done. I can see many of you are putting questions in the chat already. We will have a chance to answer them in a moment. If you want to add them to the Q&A, we'll discuss those ones first. Okay, so you can type up any questions you have into the Q&A. And yeah, thanks very much for the feedback. That's really nice. Glad you enjoyed it. Excellent. So guys, before we go into the discussion on your questions, I'm just going to do a bit of promotion for our speaking and writing evaluation service that we offer on our website, IELTSonlinetest.com. If you're interested in improving your writing, you can submit some writing, either task 1 or task 2 or both, to our website. one of our team of qualified examiners will go through it. We can give you an estimated band score to tell you, what kind of level you're at, what you can expect to achieve in the test. And we can give you some very detailed feedback on your strengths and your weaknesses in each category, whether you need to work on grammar, your lexical resource, how you're structuring your answer. We can give you that kind of feedback to help you improve your score. So if you're interested, that's available on our website. I've put the link to that in the chat, along with a link to our IELTS Explained listening and reading videos, which focus more on the listening and reading test. So if you're interested in them, please do check them out on our website. But I think we can move on to discuss some of your questions now. So Annalie, if you're had a moment to after the presentation to get your breath back, we can
ready.
We can take a look at some of these questions. So Sam Kelp, you have the first question here, which is, should we have 3 paragraphs for 3 bullet points? So I guess for each bullet point, we should write 1 paragraph. Is that kind of right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it really helps you to structure your letter. If you can see those 3 bullet points in the question, that gives you the body of your answer, which would be 3 paragraphs, and you keep it in the same order as well. So you really use those bullet points to help you structure your answer. As somebody said, leave a line between your paragraphs so it's very clear to the examiner this is the beginning of a new paragraph. And that, it looks better, and you're going to get better marks for coherence and cohesion for that.
Yeah, definitely. Excellent. I can see a question. I think we covered this, Karthik, about the is and the was, about the car being rented. Either of them is correct. The meaning is slightly different, but they're both correct, essentially. So yeah, no major difference there. Annalie, did you say there was a typo on the slide?
Yours faithfully, just right down at the bottom. It says your faithfully.
Oh, so it does. Okay, we will update that for the next one. Don't worry, guys. Definitely don't know how that one slipped through. Okay, so not enough checking by us, obviously. Okay, yes, Nida, that's your question. Is it your or yours faithfully? It should be yours faithfully with the S, so apologies for that. Another question here from Sandkelp. Do we have to write our full name? Yes, our full name at the end of the letter.
I mean, you could write your full name. You could write just your first name. As long as you write a name, the examiner's not really going to be paying that much attention to that part. So I think if you write your first name, that's fine.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think any name, as long as you have a name, it will be fine. It doesn't have to be your own name, though. No. Okay. Question from Saswati. Do I need to write down the date on the letter?
No, you don't need to write any dates. You don't need to write any addresses. You just start, dear Sir, Madam, or, dear Sue, if it's an informal letter, and finish with your name, but don't write any dates. Don't write any addresses. That's really a waste of time, and nobody looks at it.
Yeah, awesome. You're getting some very sweet compliments in the chat, Annalie. Your hairstyle is so beautiful. There you go. Very nice.
Very much, Isa.
Yeah, Isa, buttery. We like that, Isa. Thank you. Yeah. Let's see. Farheen, yes, you can add a question. Maybe put it in the Q&A. So we will discuss those ones first. Okay. Suman is asking, how about taking the exam on the computer? Suman, do you have a specific question about the exam on the computer, about the word count, about how is it different, or is it just generally what's the difference? Let us know. We can go into it in more detail. Question from Himakshi. They are asking, is it good to do underline on the computer-based exam. So is it, can we underline
So you mean
text?
the keywords he's
Mm,
talking about at the
yeah.
beginning? Well, you know, you won't be able to underline because it's going to be on the screen.
Mm,
I believe you can highlight on the
yeah.
computer based. So it comes to the same thing. You can highlight the keywords. You can make a note of them. They do give you, you know, pen and paper. So you could do that. But I think you just highlight them rather than underlining with a pen if it's the paper-based. Same reason, you know, same result.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard if you right click, there's an option to highlight the text. So you can do that for the for all parts of the test. I think it's particularly useful for the reading though, but also, yeah, the writing too. Farheen, I can see your question. Can I share my written letter? We are not able to evaluate your letter now. It's very time consuming and it won't benefit everybody, but we do have a writing evaluation service available on our website. I've put a link to that in the chat. If you're interested, that is something you can take a look at on the website. Okay, we can give you feedback on your writing there. Let's see. Question from Aditya, who's asking, do we have any tips for request or requesting letter types where we need to make some kind of request?
So if you're asking for something, you're asking
Yeah.
for information. I mean, very similar to what we've looked at here. You know, again, you will have 3 bullet points, and each of those bullet points should be 1 paragraph in your letter. Make sure you have a good range of those request phrases. So I would be grateful if, I would appreciate it if, could you please, those kind of phrases, because you're probably, if it's a request letter, you're probably going to need to use some different ones. And, you know, it's IELTS, don't repeat the same phrases. Make sure that you have a good range that you can use. Okay, but you know, it will be the same structure as this letter, whatever the topic of the letter is.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe it's worth also practicing the kind of phrases to justify your request. So, you know, I need this because, or this is, you know, really important to me because, or I need this in order to, that kind of language to give a reason for your request as well. Could be helpful. Abdullah, I can see you have a lot of questions here. So thanks for the feedback. We'll try and get through a few of these. Abdullah is saying, I find the reading part of the exam very difficult. Do we have any tips for reading time management?
Okay. So there's certain strategies that you need to use for the reading because you don't have time to read the articles. Scanning is a very, very important strategy, which means finding the information just by looking for keywords. Again, keywords. They're usually, for example, dates or names, because dates, names, numbers, they stand out in the text and they will get you to the right information as quickly as possible. Reading the first sentence of the paragraph gives you a very good idea of the layout, the organization of the article and the subject of each paragraph. So that's faster than reading the paragraph itself. Skimming, which is reading very, very quickly. These are all, you know, key skills for finding the information as quickly as possible.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. If I could add, we do have a series of video lessons focusing on the reading test, the different question types and different strategies that you can use. So I think it's really useful if you can go into the test and having practiced recognizing different question types, the type of strategy that you're going to use, the skills that you need to use to answer that question. And then you've got a process so that you can kind of quickly and efficiently, get the information that you need. So one option to learn those skills would be to check out our video course that's available on our website. Okay, so hope that's helpful for you. We'll come back to some of your questions, Abdullah. There's a lot here, about 20 in total. If we don't get round to answering them all just now, you can add them as comments to our YouTube channel on the videos. You can send them in via Facebook as well, and we can try to answer them that way as well. All right. So let's see. Suman is asking, does handwriting make any difference? My handwriting isn't good.
It shouldn't. I mean, it would have to be really, really bad for it to make a difference. Remember, examiners are very used to all types of handwriting. They're very used to things being crossed out and arrows and, order being changed, things like that. So I wouldn't worry too much about your handwriting. Try and write as clear as you can, but it's just part and parcel. That you would have to be so bad, totally and utterly illegible for the examiner to just say, no, I'm not going to mark that. And I've never had that situation. In all the years I was examining, I never came across somebody that I just couldn't read.
Yeah, definitely. And, if you are really worried about your handwriting, not being able to be read, you could think about doing the computer delivered test as well. If you're more comfortable typing like me, I would definitely prefer to do computer delivered, just because, yeah, my handwriting's not very good either. So, there you go. Let's see. A question from Nida. In some letters, I've also seen people write regards before writing their name. Is it okay?
Not for a letter. It's fine for an email, but you are writing a letter in this case. I know we don't do that very often now, but the conventions for a letter are yours faithfully or yours sincerely, if it's a formal letter. So you shouldn't use anything else to finish off the letter.
Yeah.
Okay.
For formal letters, definitely. For informal, kind regards maybe is okay. And best wishes. There are a different set of kind of sign-offs for informal letters rather than formal. Yeah, great. Let's see. Couple more questions about the number of paragraphs. So Sankalp is saying that we have 4 paragraphs in this essay, but there are only 3 bullet points. And Austin is asking, if I have more paragraphs than the bullet points in the question, will I be penalized?
You won't be penalized, no. What we've got here is we've got a lot of information for that second bullet point, which was explain the problems. So it's actually quite nice to divide that up into 2 things. And it does divide up well, because you've got the problems that you had with the car, and then you have this follow-on situation where the company didn't respond to your complaint. So that they are different. So it's quite nice to divide those up and make them 2 separate paragraphs. More paragraphs is better than fewer paragraphs. You wouldn't want to put all of the paragraphs together. So if you have a lot of information, you can break up 1 bullet point into 2 separate paragraphs. And again, your linking is going to help show the relationship between the different paragraphs. Usually there's usually one that requires quite a lot of detail, and that one you might want to put in 2 paragraphs.
Yeah, exactly. If you try to just think, it'll be 1 main idea per paragraph. So, if you've got a lot of information, you're dealing with like 2 slightly different, topics, you can try to split them up into 2 shorter paragraphs will be fine, even if they're just, 2 sentences each. Ideally, you don't just want to have 1 sentence in a paragraph, but you know, what 2 sentences in a paragraph should be fine. Yeah, great. Glad we helped answer your question there, Austin. Glad to hear that. Excellent. Guys, I'm afraid that we are running out of time for the session today, so we're going to have to wrap up very soon. So, yeah, a very big thank you to Annalie for presenting and answering your questions. Thank you, Annalie.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jamie. Thanks, everybody. Great participation there. Good luck if you got your tests coming up.
Definitely, guys. Yeah, best of luck to you all if you have your tests coming up. We hope this lesson's been helpful for you. We have a number of other sessions coming up in the next few weeks, so you can keep an eye out on our website for details of those. If you have any questions you'd like to ask us we didn't cover today, you can add them as comments on our YouTube channel. If you could give us a like or a subscribe or share the channel with your friends, that would be awesome. It helps us a lot, and it helps us to keep offering these webinars for free. So we appreciate that. So yeah, thanks very much, guys. We hope to see you again in another lesson soon. So bye for now. And thanks again, Annalie. Cheers. See you
Thanks,
soon.
Jamie. Thanks, everyone. Bye, guys.
Thanks.
Take
See you
care.
guys.
See you
Bye
again.
for now.
Bye-bye, Toshin. Bye, guys.